Hey everybody, welcome. Today I'm super excited to have Chelan here with me, Chelan Harkin. She is a super amazing and brave and just badass and down to earth modern day mystical poet. Was that a long enough title?
I love it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Thank
Yeah.
you.
She has been compared to poets like Hafiz and Rumi. And I stumbled across her work kind of just following some intuitive nudges. I ended up finding her on Facebook somehow, and I started reading her poetry, and I was like, this is super strong medicine for me. And I knew right away the first time I read one poem. Um, so see, I have her book here. Actually, it was only a few nights ago that I was randomly opening to pages and reading poems to myself. And I was just getting ready for this interview conversation, and I laid in bed with this book next to my head
Hmm.
a little while. How does that make you feel?
I love it.
Okay,
I
awesome.
love it.
Um,
I
I'll
encourage
tell you,
that practice.
yeah, like why her poetry really touches me is that it feels really like it just kind of speaks right to my soul. And it speaks to the part of my soul that is like deep and that sometimes hurts. And it at the same time speaks to the part of my soul that is innocent and just loves being alive. And it does it both at the same time.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah. And she has a one book that's been published recently called Susceptible to Light that I was holding up. And another one is going to be published in June, and that one's called Let Us Dance, the Stumble and Whirl with the Beloved. And so I reached out to Chelan and asked her if she would want to do one of these conversations with me. And so here we are. We've been catching up for a little while, laughing and joking and getting ready to the last thing we commented on was just how like this is live. And she has done a number of interviews recently, and this is the first time that she's done one that's live. So it's co-creation and action with all of our awkwardness and any stumbles and just being ourselves. Yeah. So just to start off the conversation, I really really love your story of how you came to write poetry in the way that you do.
Mm-hmm.
How you decided that you were going to write bad poems. So I thought maybe that would be a nice place to kind of just start us off. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. So I was 21 and I was struggling miserably in college because I had so much emotional baggage that I just could barely function. And I had such a deep need and desire for authentic connection and authentic expression. And yet I felt I didn't have any sense of how to do that and how to get that need met. And I was really just in acute suffering constantly. And poetry had been an important part of my life. But my way of writing poetry was very, there was a lot of effort involved in it and kind of like strain, and I kind of think about hunching my shoulders, and like that was kind of the energy of it. And I would get little snippets and try to like put them together, and a lot of editing and a lot of thought went into it. And then one day I don't know, I can't really say what inspired me to try this, except for just sheer desperation, to have some kind of expression that felt genuine. But I set myself up with this experiment where I committed to write a poem a day for a month, and I committed to share that. And I had all kinds of obstacles around sharing my poetry, and brought up all kinds of stuff around being seen and being just bringing myself, my kind of inner self forward. And so that was really the big thing, was the sharing the poem daily. And I told myself I could write a bad poem every day for a month. And so I showed up to the task the first day and wrote a poem that was, it was a nice poem, and I shared it. It was the first poem ever that I'd shared on Facebook. And I got some nice feedback, and that was just really heartening and encouraging. And of course, I was terrified to share my words. And that felt good. And then the next day I showed up again and just had a very profound transformation in the whole way that I wrote the poem. So rather than efforting, it was just an opening and a receiving the poem. And it was truly an extraordinary experience for me. Really a not just a creative shift, but really a kind of just a massive change in many ways. And since then, I've just been receiving poetry rather than really crafting it per se.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so my intention with poetry anymore, it's never to sit down and write a poem. It's to try to live in a way where I'm open to
Yeah.
to receive, and try to clear out obstacles to just stay receptive. Yeah.
It's such a beautiful story. Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious, when that happened, that you had that experience of receiving the poem, like, what did that change for you? How did that change you?
How did it change me? Good question. Well, my poetry became way better. So, because it wasn't, I don't know why, and I don't know why that is. And I say that I don't feel like I'm bragging at all when I say that, because what changed was that it felt like it connected me to something beyond myself. Because when these poems come through, they feel like they kind of mingle with my energy and essence to some degree, and it's kind of like it feels like a co-creative process. But I feel like I don't know, I'm in just communication with some kind of muse from some other land.
Yeah.
And so that really it was kind of like this chord of connection to something just beautiful and true. I also just really trusted my creative process. Like, when poetry started coming through in that way, I had way less, I was way less inhibited about sharing it. And I don't know, it was just this beautiful experience of trusting that something was just as it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it really, that my creative relationship really helped me get by in some just very hard years of emotional anguish.
Yeah.
That was a light. Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of just brings me to like one of these other like thoughts that I've had as I've been
Mm-hmm.
reflecting on your work, is like your poetry like just is shining with light. I feel like that is the biggest gift of it. It's just
Thank you.
it lights up what something in anyone who reads it. I see the comments
Wow.
that people are putting on your Facebook. It's
Oh, nice.
putting out this beautiful medicine of light. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm just wondering, like,
Mm.
was like to kind of have that experience, because when we experience light, it kind of illuminates our shadows. And so I'm just, what was that process like for you? Is that kind of resonate, that it was kind of a journey of exploring some of those,
Those shadows?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, there is a lot of energy of light, and well, I'll say that it's been an interesting process, kind of, because about half of the poems in that book were written in my early 20s, during really, really tough inner times. And so part of me was like really struggling with imposter syndrome, like struggling with such heaviness and so much shadow and all of that. And then I'm writing these like light poems.
Right.
I'm like, what the hell? Like, what's going on with this? But it's all It's so the poetry has always felt like more than illuminating the shadows. It was kind of just this line of grace. It almost felt like my soul was frustrated. So that we have our soul and then we have all of our conditioning. And like my true spirit was just frustrated.
Yeah.
And it needed to just burst out like like it has that kind of energy, like a geyser.
Yeah.
And so it was just sort of this energy would just sort of spout out. So yes, but I have had experiences recently. I had a couple of experiences actually, really profound experiences of consciousness, of the sense of I am being. I wrote a poem about this. Maybe I'll read it. Being something that can't be diminished or enhanced, and it was just like so clearly we have this. Each of us. It was clear that it wasn't just me. Like that we each have this unique selfhood that is inherently satisfied and connected and luminous and whatnot. And so I had this really profound experience quite recently. And then since then, oh my God, Nicole, like it's been really bringing up all kinds of new shadow areas.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a very real phenomenon, what you mentioned about
Yes.
light illuminating hard stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely can just relate to that same experience, of feeling so like inspired and alive and connected. And
Mm-hmm.
that I found is, the more that I've come to trust and be mindful and just kind of sit back and notice what's happening with myself, that there's like a much greater contrast. And I feel like I can more easily see who I am and what's not mine and what's not me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm curious about like, how you kind of receive the poems and it comes through like feeling connected to the divine, and you write about that's a very a topic that interweaves its way into your poetry.
Yes.
Have you always felt that connection your whole life?
That's a really interesting question. It's kind of multi-layered. So on one level, I feel like yes. On a very, very deep level, I feel like I've always had a sense of that connection. And then it was like mega veiled in my preteen years.
Yes.
And then especially, and then I just became like profoundly depressed around age like 14 to 22. Those were the shadow years. And so I wasn't living in a way where that really, I say it didn't nourish me. I wasn't in deep contact with it, but I also feel like we can never not fully be out of contact with it if it's a true part of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like even in my most desperate moments, I don't feel that I ever really lost a sense of motivation to find a connection with that.
Yeah.
And I think it's because some part of me was always in contact with it. And I don't actually, when I say that, I'm not really talking about God as the other, but more of just an inherently a part of me that has always been inherently like lovable, basically, and healthy and happy and whole and worthy, that I feel like is connected to this, like if we have that, I think it's because it comes from a spiritual source.
Yeah.
But anyway, did I complete a thought there?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
It's always been there. It's always been there.
It's always, on some level, it's always been there.
Yeah.
And to greater and lesser degrees, have I been satisfied by it?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really interesting way to put it. I like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Is it like, now when you write, how often do you write a poem these days?
Every day.
Yeah.
About three or four a day.
So what's that like? You're Do you intentionally sit down, or are you like washing the dishes and you're like, oh, I feel a poem coming, I gotta go grab some paper?
That way.
Okay.
Yeah. And in this journey, which has been its own really kind of distinct journey the last since late November, I really committed to. I didn't really take my creative expression that seriously until this recent wild experience with this publication and all that's come from it and such. But around then, I just very much committed to every time I had a poem coming to really take it seriously. So these days, like, it's priority number one. If I'm driving, I voice record it into my phone. I wake up at night sometimes to write a poem.
Yeah.
My husband's been very supportive. Like, often I'm like, take the kids, the poem's coming through, and he understands. And it's good. It doesn't take too long, actually. It's just like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. So it hasn't been that way always, but the last since I committed to putting this book out, it's
Right.
been anywhere between usually 1 to 10 poems a day. Yeah.
Wow, 10 poems a day. Oh man.
Yeah, it's been nuts, completely nuts.
Do you think that you would be able to say to ask it for a break for a week?
I have. Yes.
What happened?
That's funny that you ask. Um, well, this is kind of connected to a larger story, but when things were getting going with this process, I had just bought some Hafez poetry, mystical poet renderings by Daniel Ladinsky, and I was doing an experiment where I would go on a nightly prayer walk, I suppose, and just see if Hafez, had any spare muse to share with me. And I would just chat with him and ask him for inspiration. And that's really when things went insane. Like, it was my head, like, it felt like, this sounds out there, but it just felt like torrential amounts of like light were being poured through my head. And it became almost inconvenient and uncomfortable. So I was like, okay, Hafez, like, screw it back on. This is too much. Yeah. And then actually recently I almost wrote to my friend Mary, who's been I've had some incredible influences in this process, and she's been one. And she's helped me a lot with promotional things. And I almost wrote to her to ask her if any of her friends would like to borrow my muse for a while. Cause I was almost like, I need a break. It's just been a lot.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. It's a good problem to have.
yes, actually, this is like a concept that
Yeah.
I have been brought up recently to me.
Mm.
Something that Amanda and I, who are working on this project together, have been talking about is that there's almost this like creative like force, and there's like something that wants
Yeah.
to be created, and like
Yes.
also sometimes like maybe we don't always want to step into that place, and there's like somewhere in between that we navigate back and forth between.
Yes. Yes. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel really, so I had started to, like, feel like I was ready for some space from the muse or whatever. But then there were a couple days, it was the first couple days in 6 months that I hadn't felt any poems coming through. And then I felt abandoned by the muse,
Oh no.
and sad that it was gone.
Right.
So yeah, it can go back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for someone who wanted to like get a connection like that going with their muse?
That's a very good question. So, I mean, I'll just share what has worked for me, which is doing my utmost to try to step out of any kind of perfectionist stuff. Like, just there's kind of an energy of allowance, I guess, that has been helpful to me. And so that experiment of just like allowing yourself to write a bad whatever, or do a bad job, it takes so much pressure off, and performance anxiety and perfectionism, and allows energy to flow. So you could give that experiment a shot. And then I mean, gosh, anymore, I'm like, it has worked for me to find my dead poet friend Hafez and just ask for support in that way. So you could give that a try as well.
Yeah, and
Yep.
then maybe everyone has their own version of their role
Right.
model,
Yeah.
creative.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so cool. I love
It's
that.
really cool. Can I extrapolate on the story a
Yes,
little bit more
please.
about Hafez? Just
Yeah.
because, I mean, so 7 months ago, if I'd heard myself giving like a live Facebook talk encouraging people to pray, I'd have been like, who the hell have I become? Like, it would have been very weird for me to hear myself. But
Me too. I wouldn't have imagined myself here 6 months ago either. So
wow. Oh, how awesome. That's so cool that so much change has happened for both of
yeah.
us in such short order.
Yes.
Yeah. So but so when the poetry started just flowing so wildly, then I started asking Hafez for promotional help with my book. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just really in a playful, like, I was like, I don't know if prayer is even real. I don't know at all, but it doesn't hurt to give it a try. So it was a playful attitude. I asked Hafez to find all the delegates that he needed in the spirit world and in this world so that he wouldn't feel overwhelmed with the job. And yeah, and then 3 weeks into that practice, Daniel Ladinsky, his main renderer, like finds my book somehow, my self-published poetry book, reaches out to me and suggests that we collaborate on a book together, which
Mm-hmm.
was just insane beyond anything I'd ever experienced.
Yes.
And then today, actually, he wrote a foreword for my book, and I'm going to be including that. And it's just such a wild journey. And whether or not, I mean, the word prayer has so many complicated associations. But what this experience has shown me, that I'm really coming around to believing, and certainly I'm able to just share with anyone, is that we're interconnected, and there are profound energetic ties
Mm-hmm.
between people, and I'm excited as hell about that, what that means, and the implications of that, and that when we put the energy in our heart forward with the intention of it benefiting others in the world, like, just incredible resources find us.
Right.
So I'm excited about that.
I love that concept too. And you wrote a poem, or I remember you posting a poem not too long ago, and the picture was like a web. And
Oh,
it was
yes.
about experimentation, and it was like,
Mm,
what if, we're all connected in this great web, and like
yeah.
did the experiment of putting something out there and seeing what the universe like brings back to you, and
Mhm.
that
Should I,
spoke to me.
should I try to read that? Should I try to find that one?
That would be amazing.
Okay, let's see.
What's it?
Oh, I don't remember. I actually, most of these poems are as of yet untitled.
Hmm.
Maybe, you know what, Nicole, I think it'll be too long of a search.
Okay, no worries.
But thanks for mentioning it.
Yes.
While we're at it, should I read another poem though?
Yeah.
Does that feel like the right time?
Well, let me ask you a question first. Is this the one
Oh,
about being too much?
ask me a question. It could be.
Okay.
If you Yeah.
Is that
Go.
is that
But
one?
yeah, okay, sure, it'll be that one. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So my question is like, what was it like for you learning how to be authentic?
Mm, good question. Very good question. Well, it's an ongoing journey, of course. And there are many moments when I still feel very inauthentic, and I guess by inauthentic, I just mean I'm hiding because it's more comfortable. um, so your question was, what was it? Say your question again.
What has it been like for you to become more and more authentic,
Ah, yes.
especially
Well,
with your
so
creative work and sharing it?
mhm. Oh my gosh. It was in terms of my creative work and sharing it, especially in this big way in the last 6 months, like just burning through so many parts. Let's see, that's a better way to say it. Just shedding so many skins,
Mm-hmm.
shedding so many skins, and continually encountering fear of rejection and just, you know, fear that people will think I'm weird. I had this long laundry list before publishing my book of like, people don't give a shit about poetry. People will never pay for poetry. People will only like poetry written by a man. All kinds of things. People will think I'm childish for
Yeah.
wanting to be a poet. On and on.
Yes.
And so then in moving forward with that, and this is I think why it's so scary and hard to move forward toward the things that we love, is that we encounter these things. So there was a lot of just really big, deep grieving, which for me, that's the way that I shed the skins and move through the fire
Yeah.
and come out somewhat more whole and anew.
Yeah.
So just a tremendous amount of that, really. But each time I would put myself forward and then have this big skin shedding cry, feeling more resilient, and also just for the most part getting wonderful feedback, and so just growing in resilience and eagerness and enthusiasm to continue on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a good answer. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Just lots of molting.
So
People
much
saying
molting.
that word to me
All
a
the
lot
molting.
lately. Molting.
What's that?
Been hearing that word a lot lately if people describe to me what's happening to them.
Oh, good. Yeah. So we're not the only ones. Yeah. No, it's molting. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Would you like to read that poem?
Sure. Let's see.
Fighting through her hundreds of tabs that she told me about.
Oh, God. Okay, here we go. Can you see me? Because I'm on a different page right now. Is it all
I
still
can still see
good
you.
for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So this poem is called I Am Too Much, which is a phrase I know many women are familiar with navigating. So, and I am too. So here it is. I'm too much. It's time to reframe and reclaim the phrase, I am too much. It's time to practice being okay with it, lathering ourselves in it, and basking in all that we are. Here goes. I'm too much. I want to devour suns for breakfast and kiss the center of every heart. I'm too much for niceties. All I want is to experience the inmost nectar of the soul. I'm too much. I'm divorcing myself from the timid, ongoingly gray life of a repressed sky. Let's dive into the center of our storms. I'm too much for small attachments to encourage me to live in the margins of the heart on the outside of life. I'm too much to be appropriately tipsy. I want to pop the cork off this world and make all things intoxicated with glee. I'm too much. I want to stalk God all the way home to the center of every beauty and sweetness. Go forth, glorious, too much one, and pour your rivers of light that quench the world. Go forth and feed every ravenous soul from the generous table of your heart, knowing your essence is one of feast, not famine. Go forth and live in a way that reminds people how abundantly luminous each night is with her stars. Let your too muchness be your devotion. God, after all, is the queen of too much, polyamorous with every religion and every heart as she is, and she does not stop making her point after only one galaxy. Yes, by all means, be too much. Your heart was made to be a gong, not a penny whistle. Your beauty is a downpour, not a sprinkle. Your voice is a nourishing meal for this hungry world, not a garnish. Your too much has been a tight judgment that tries to tie down your vastness and constrain the cosmos within you. Reclaim it and pour forth your stars. Reclaim it and become just the right size to hold the universe.
It makes me feel
Woo!
fancy.
Good. Good.
Mhm.
That's the hope.
It feels like so much permission.
Good. Good. Permission's such a powerful thing. Seriously. When we really have permission to be who we are in all of our shades, it's incredibly liberating.
I think one of the most powerful things about creative people is getting like a window into how they see the world,
Nice.
which I feel like when I hear you reading that poem, I can see you like taking a walk through the woods and like looking around and seeing the detail of the tree bark and
Nice.
through the leaves and like a bird suddenly flying and feeling all of that within yourself and like having this feeling of like everythingness kind of just like exploding.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I'm so glad I'm so glad that's communicated.
Yeah.
It's so fun to hear how these poems influence people because of course I know how they influence me, and then it's so but their purpose and their hope is to really reach and impact others in a
Right.
nourishing way and in a liberating way. And so when that happens, it's so rewarding.
How does that poem influence you?
Well, that's funny that you're like imagining me on a walk and all these like. I think that poem came after just like a day of feeling really hemmed in, actually, and needing to break through, and just certain old energies kind of feeling more claustrophobic inside of those old patterns.
Right.
And then, sorry, what was your question?
Well, what it means to you.
What it means to me. Yeah, so often these poems are kind of a result of like a certain energy kind of
Yeah.
coming home, like me owning this part of myself. I've been afraid of being too much in many times in many ways, and too potent and too loving and too emotional, all yada yada.
Yeah.
And so kind of bringing back as something that can actually kind of reframing parts of myself as a strength and an asset instead of a liability.
Right.
So it's usually, these poems are usually part of very intimate processes for me.
Yes. I come across a lot of people who feel like they are too deep.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. That we're supposed to be light and we have this responsibility to like be fake happy and entertain each other.
Yeah, or
And
it's
so deep is a problem, kind of like that.
right. Mhm. Well, I think that your poetry like redefines deep a little bit.
Oh, cool. How so?
It brings lightness to the depth.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, thank you. I'm
Yeah.
so glad to hear that.
Like there's that one poem that you have that's like about pinching God's butt.
Oh, yeah.
I love that one.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, I care about bringing a lightness to spiritual relationships, and yeah, and a light. Yeah, I do care about bringing a lightness to the depths, and I think that the two are they're so integrated. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
Can I ask
Yeah, you can ask anything. I mean it. Permit you have.
Oh, what's the hardest question I can ask now?
Oh gosh. Well, what were you going to ask? Let's start with that.
I'm just kidding. I was going to ask what's next?
What's next in terms of
Well, like
in general?
we were talking earlier about how
Yes.
you have sort of come into this, like you just access something so huge with your poetry, and
Mm-hmm.
how you are almost like, I don't know, I guess a metaphor that's been like kind of coming through to me personally lately is that I'm like existing within a certain box of like possibilities or reality. And like there's certain
Mm.
times where like the box opens and falls, the walls fall open, and I realize I'm in like a much bigger box now.
Yes.
And so you've like, I don't know, I'm just imagining, perhaps it feels like now you've kind of like you've expanded a lot, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, like that's, so I'm just curious, like after experiencing that, it probably makes you wonder like what else is possible. I mean, you put a prayer out to the universe to have help promoting your book, and your like role models, um what's the right word, like
Yes.
public,
Primary inspiration. Yeah.
he reached
Mhm.
out to you. I mean, that's so like
Yeah.
what else is possible if you kind of let that box
Yeah.
fall open?
Right. That's a good question. Well, one thing that's so okay. Well, one thing that is next, just in practical terms, is publishing this second book
Yeah.
of poetry, which is coming out soon. So that's exciting. And then, I mean, honestly, though, this is kind of an unromantic answer, I guess, but what's next is continuing to learn about how to relate to more mundane elements of my life, and to be more present in those as a mom. Oh my God, that's the biggest area of challenge for me.
Yeah.
And we spoke earlier about being in a place where I'm kind of wanting to I have this really potent area of connection. It kind of feels like a lightning bolt.
Yeah.
But I want it to be like a sun that illuminates, more of my whole world. And I'm afraid actually of opening to that deeper, or that wider place of real satisfaction actually, and connection with things, because I'm actually afraid that my poetry will leave me if I am more satisfied and quenched by other elements of the world. So I've been noticing kind of this clinging to this small box, as you say, for fear of this precious thing leaving. And so often those fears are not true.
Yeah.
But that's something that I'm in process with right now, is letting go of more, limiting ways of relating to myself in all things, that I may be more loving and happier.
Yeah.
And we'll see what comes with that. So that's in the
Mm.
broadest terms, that
That's
hopefully is.
that's really beautifully said.
Oh, thank you, Nicole.
Yeah,
Thanks.
really beautifully said. And I can totally relate to that feeling
Mm,
of like,
yeah.
wow, a lot has changed, a lot has come through. Can I like let go? Can I step back a little bit? And is it time to like enjoy? Is it time to enjoy like the simplicity of what's around me?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm also looking forward to I've had some tastes in this process, some really amazing tastes of um pushing less, efforting less, and putting forth intentions more, and listening to intuition more, and praying more, asking whatever is God, whatever you want to call it, and things just working so much more beautifully and gracefully and amazingly and miraculously than I ever could have imagined. And it just goes to show how stubborn a mind can be, though, because I'm still
Mhm.
working with skepticism and resistance. And so that's also next, is just continuing to experiment with doing
Mhm.
things that way,
Yes.
and get more and more and more, hopefully, evidence, experienced evidence that works, and there is something beyond my little self.
Yeah, and that's exactly the word that I was thinking of. It is an experiment. It's because
Yeah.
you're like kind of ready to try out a different way of being.
Yes.
All these wonderful things have happened and reinforced your trust, and then
Yes.
to kind of shift and do things a different way,
Mm-hmm.
it's another step of trust.
Yes. You very much so.
Yeah.
It's so nice talking with you, Nicole. You're
Oh,
so easy to talk to.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. Well, it's really lovely talking with you as well. And I'm,
Yes.
like, super I just feel really grateful. I feel very alive talking with you
Oh,
about all of this.
I'm so happy to hear that. I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you
Yeah.
for that feedback.
Yes.
I feel like it's just very, very easy to be genuine and open about all the things with you. And that's really special.
Oh, thank you.
And
Well,
that
that
takes a lot of strength that really I know that you've done a lot of work to be able to offer that, create that kind of environment for people. And it's such a gift.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's not always
Mm.
something that I can notice for myself, but over time, like a big part of my own journey has just been kind of valuing myself and really actually
Yes.
kind of noticing my worth. It's hard to do that for yourself, and it's helpful when
No,
people reflect it back to you. And that is one of the things that I feel like comes through from others is, wow, I feel like I can really be myself around you, and you always remind me that whatever I'm experiencing is okay, and it doesn't have to be what
good.
everyone else is experiencing. And that
Yes.
makes me feel really good because I think that a lot of us, we become the person that we most needed at a time in the past.
Oh, how interesting. That feels right.
Yeah. So maybe you're the person that you needed when you were 21 now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I think so. I think I am.
What would
How
you say to
sweet.
her?
How sweet to honor our old selves that way. Oh God, what would I sue? We were talking about awkwardness before
Yes.
this we went live too, and I'm just like, ooh, there's still some awkward elements in there. But what would I say to her? Yeah, I guess you know what, I would really just tell her that her suffering was that there was meaning and purpose in it, and it wasn't her, it wasn't who she was, but that it would lead her on a truly incredible path. It would be her best teacher in empathy and compassion and strength, and that she would find a way to really alchemize a lot of
Mm.
old painful conditioning into beautiful medicine, and
Uh,
that she would truly find her power path of service and magic in this world, largely thanks to the the shadows.
oh.
Be
Set
fun
that
to
in a
be like
time
a
capsule back to the past.
yeah. Yep.
Maybe
And
she can.
maybe
She's
go ahead,
probably
sorry.
praying. She's in some time in the past. I'm gonna get weird and awkward now.
Let's
Okay,
get
so
so weird at the end here.
okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be as weird as I can for now.
Excellent.
There right now in this parallel past time, your younger self is praying for exactly this message. Maybe she just received it.
Oh, that gave me shivers, Nicole.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love it.
Well,
Yes.
some part of her might still be here, in you.
Mm. Uh-oh. I mean, great.
You just gave her the medicine. Don't worry.
There we go. Okay. No, I think she is. I think all of our parts are in us in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form. Sometimes it's nice when they're fully, like, the energy is fully recycled into, but usually I feel like we have all kinds of old hangups, old hooks of old selves.
Yeah. Well, and they also have beautiful stuff for us too.
Oh, that's true. Good point.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry. It's okay.
Thanks.
um, well, I just want to encourage anyone who checks this out at any time to get a copy of this book.
Hmm.
Let it be your bedside table medicine. Like, I can't even
Hmm.
tell you how wonderful of a practice it is for me to just open up to a random page and find something that speaks to me that day. Um,
Wow.
and I'm super excited to get your next book. Let Us Dance.
Oh, thank you.
And just so excited to see what everything that unfolds for you. Really happy for
Mm.
you. Thank you for honoring this crazy path and
Mm,
Like, putting your gift out there, because I know that you had to be brave a lot of times, and you're helping a
yes.
lot of people. It's really beautiful.
Oh, what an honor. Thank you so much for saying that, Nicole.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
I'm wondering if perhaps you would want to close up our conversation with maybe a poem.
let's do that. Yes. Um, so I'm going to share this one, which this one I did write on a walk.
Hmm.
Just jumped right through, and this one came through really kind of quite quickly, like 15 seconds or so. And it's funny, before posting it, I was shy about this one for some reason, and I read it to my husband, and I needed validation and all of that. And this poem has been the one that has really opened it all for me. It's been shared more than 20,000 times somehow on
Wow.
Facebook and all the different social media platforms, and I'm just so grateful for it. And I really like that I felt hesitation and some insecurity for some reason about sharing it, because I think that can just speak to others in our process of expressing. We never know what the impact that our work is going to have. And so I hope that those moments of insecurity or, self-doubt or whatever, aren't, that we don't necessarily treat them as absolute obstacles. I'm so glad that I didn't in this case. So this is called The Worst Thing. The worst thing we ever did was put God in the sky out of reach, pulling the divinity from the leaf, sifting out the holy from our bones, insisting God isn't bursting dazzlement, through everything we've made a hard commitment to see as ordinary, stripping the sacred from everywhere to put in a cloud man elsewhere, prying closeness from your heart. The worst thing we ever did was take the dance and the song out of prayer, made it sit up straight and cross its legs, removed it of rejoicing, wiped clean its hip sway, its questions, its ecstatic yowl, its tears. The worst thing we ever did is pretend God isn't the easiest thing in this universe, available to every soul in every breath.
Hmm.
Hmm. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who's tuned in too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful poem. I just want to give it the space.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank
I know why that's been shared so many
you.
times.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Um, hmm. Any last words of wisdom?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I guess, okay. I'll put on my motivational speaker hat and just,
Okay.
I just really believe that we all have beautiful gifts inside of us, and that bringing those forward is a huge part of our journey in this world, and that if we have these gifts inside of us, that they're necessary, and that they are medicine for the world. And it doesn't matter if it's like it doesn't have to be all deep and meaningful. These gifts, it can just be whatever it is that really summons your joy forth, that you truly love doing. And I find that I don't know, we all have ways of writing these things off and neglecting these things that largely because of like capitalist conditioning and stuff, and thinking we have to make money for it and yada yada. It has to be, and competitive conditioning, it has to be the best or else. And like none of that is we're all seeking joy, and the acme really of every fragmented attempt at getting enough money or looking a certain way or doing this, that, or the other, or getting all these accomplishments. It's our peace and our joy. And those things can be nurtured through sharing our gifts, and pursuing the things that we love. And it doesn't have to be full time, but the more we can value that enough to make time for it, I think the better off we are, and the better off those around us in the world are, and it inspires other people to do the same.
Yes.
So I encourage that.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It's just
a
very motivational hat you have. A very
yeah, maybe I should get a real hat. I don't know. Maybe not.
Take that little snippet and sell it for people to listen to when they need motivation to just be their best selves and be themselves, just to be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Which
isn't it so?
Bringing
sorry, okay.
Forward. No, go ahead.
Oh, I just think it's on some levels it's agony, but on some levels it's funny that we have a hard time being ourselves, because we just always are ourselves, and we always struggling with ourselves.
Like,
isn't it exactly always trying to find ourselves and here we are. And I think what it really means is that we don't have environments that are accepting, and so we think we have to exile ourselves all the time, because we're so wired to care about belonging and connection.
Yes.
But we can talk about that on another day.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, thank you again, Nicole.
Thank you so much. It's just been it's been really fun.
I agree.
Yeah.
And that's such a great token of success, when things are fun.
Yes.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yes. It's so nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks everyone for tuning in. All right, and have a good night.
Bye.